Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic, let's do it. What's something you've witnessed that you just can't explain? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I was out at my friend's cabin in the middle of nowhere and woke up around 4 a.m. and something in me said to just drive home. I got my stuff and left. This was backwoods, no light, no pavement type of road. So I'm driving and I see this light in the trees. I drove by it and something told me to stop, so I did. Got out of my car and there's a car wedged about 30 feet into the woods, almost vertical, with the dome light on. It had crashed. I went up to the car, and there's a girl wedged between the windshield and dashboard, bleeding profusely. I now know what blood smells like. I jump out of the car and grab my phone. No signal. I didn't know, or maybe it didn't work then, that 911 will always be reachable even without a signal. So I panic for a second. Do I help her, or do I drive till I get service? I drive till I get service, tell 911 approximately where I am, and that it's an unmarked road. 911 operator tells me to go back, turn on my headlights, and try to apply pressure to whatever I see bleeding, so I do exactly that. First responder arrives after a few minutes. I honestly don't know what woke up and told me I needed to make a 4-hour drive at 4 a.m. I don't know why I felt the need to stop and investigate a tiny light in the woods. One time when we were kids, my brother and I were at a local playground with our two friends, who are sisters. This playground was basically just one of those gigantic open metal sides, and then grassland and some brick wall enclosure thing with flowers and bushes on top, probably to keep the kids safe from passing cars or whatever. Anyway, we went pretty much every day because our friends lived nearby. And this one time we were there and we were all standing at the top of the grassy hill waiting for our turn to go down the slide or playing Power Rangers or something. And I swear to God, there was this jingling sound and right down at the bottom there was this round thing floating down from the sky. It was like a glowing ball. Looked to be about a tennis ball size, maybe slightly smaller. It landed in one of the flower beds in the raised wall enclosures. We all looked at each other and legged it down the slope to investigate. Never found it. To this day, we all remember it vividly. One of the sisters is very skeptical about everything, and when we brought it back up recently, she even said, "Oh wow, I thought I had dreamt that." I used to live in Savannah, Georgia, downtown in the historic district. Savannah is famous for being a haunted city due to the Civil War, yellow fever outbreak, and major fire that burnt down a lot of the city. The city has multiple ghost tours, one of the more ridiculous ones being where they drive you around in a hearse and stop at famous haunted locations, but there are a lot of dead bodies underground all over. Some just piled into mass graves. I never believed in ghosts and still don't, but I did have an unexplainable experience. One night, I went out to the bars with some friends. We all ended up at my friend's carriage house apartment to sober up and socialize. At around 3 a.m., I decided I was going to make my way home. Saying bye to my friends, I make the multiple block trek home. Now, the historic district is dead quiet at night. You might hear the occasional car in the distance, but other than that, it's quiet. I had to walk from my friend's place near Columbia Square to my place near Green Square, a walk I've made many times before. So I'm walking around Columbia Square, which has a fountain in the middle, which was cutting through the ambiance. So I make it to the corner of Habersham and East President, and I'm walking along the brick sidewalk when I start to hear loud footsteps behind me, clear as day. Sounded like heels clicking along the ground. My first thought was I was about to get robbed. Students in the area have been known to get mugged time and time again. So I turn around in defense, but there's no one there. The footsteps continue though. I'm just standing there in this surreal situation as the footsteps seemingly seem to walk by me and continue up a staircase next to me before stopping. I didn't feel in any danger. I was just like, what the was that? And I walked home a little faster. I have no idea what that was, how I could be hearing footsteps. Never had that kind of experience before or since. There was no one around. Everyone I've told this story to is either you were imagining things or dude, you heard a ghost. I don't know. I was exploring this abandoned nursing home. It was the middle of day and either spring or summer, so it was broad daylight and bright sunlight. Everything around it was dead except for one flower growing there. That was the first sign it was creepy. I went in through an open window and the place was a wreck, but it was so dark. I left the room I was in and could see out the windows, but it was so creepy, as was pitch black to my left and right down the adjoining hallways, even though there were windows everywhere. On the window closet, to me, there was this creepy photo of 3 kids in a bathtub taped to it, and they had these weird expressions on their faces, like something bad happened. I was tempted to walk a little bit to the nearest dark corridor, because I was feeling brave, but when I started hearing laughing and weird noises, I decided to walk back out of the room I came in. What had me noping the F out of there and running for my life was when something that I swear was a human hand with the silhouette of a person dropped out of the ceiling, and I launched myself out of the nearest window. The person I was with had stayed outside, but he saw it too, and neither of us could explain it. It was the creepiest experience of my life. This was in the middle of a housing estate too, in a small Scottish town, and everything around it looked normal. That place was just creepiness intensified. It's been knocked down now and turned into more houses, but F living in one of them, I'm fully convinced that place was haunted, and I've never ever believed in the supernatural. About 10 years ago, my cousin and I drove to a scenic overlook at the top of a nearby mountain. We parked at the top and hiked straight down and forward several miles. We were looking for an old miner's graveyard and a section of railcar for coal mining that remained from the early 1800s. I cannot say this enough. We hiked straight down and straight forward for miles. All the while, the scenic overlook where my car was parked loomed back and above us in distant view at the top of the mountain. We find a coal cart and are looking around on the ground for any little pieces of anything. I'd found big lumps of coal, several 100-year-old nails, and horseshoes before, and stepped off the trail. We noticed we stepped off the trail immediately and walked back over to the coal cart, which we were only like 10 yards away from at most. Coal cart wasn't there anymore. We were now staring at my car and the scenic overlook. I can't describe the fear and confusion when it happened, and the effing heebie-jeebies it gives me to think about even now 10 years on. We talk about it often, prompting the other to retell it to see if we're remembering things wrong, but it's the same for both of us, just doesn't make sense. I think about it a lot, and as cheesy as it sounds, sometimes I almost start to think maybe something saved us from becoming another set of missing persons you hear about in the middle of nowhere that most likely fell into a mine. But I just don't know what to think of it. It was so much more than being redirected or turned around. We just magically appeared several miles back up and across the mountain instantly. No funny feelings, no time lost, nothing. It's not like we wandered for a long time and went into a circle. We just stepped off the trail to look at the ground and turned around, and there was my car. I was about 8 and my family and I were on vacation in the mountains. It was dinner time and we were going to have a campfire. It was starting to get dark. There was this big hill next to the campfire. I went up the hill to look for some firewood. When I got to the top of the hill and out of my parents' sight, I heard this weird beeping noise and something flew past my head. I found this pyramid-shaped metal thing lying on the ground. It was still beeping and I decided to poke it with a stick. When I touched it, it felt like being zapped by one of those prank gum things. It stopped peaking and made this weird whirring noise like it was powering up. The top then started glowing blue. That's when I freaked out and ran down the hill crying to my parents about UFOs, lol. My parents went up but didn't find anything. Still no clue what it was. I used to work at a well-known jewelry store. If there were no customers, we had to make ourselves look busy by polishing the glass cabinets. We used to call the shop the Fishbowl, because the entire shop except the back wall was a window in the indoor town center. mall if you're American, I guess. Some of the glass cabinets were directly in front of the windows. I was polishing one of those glass cabinets one day, and I saw a real-life NPC. I know people joke and say they see him when someone randomly stops in the middle of a street, but I'm being so serious. There were two men. One stood statue still, not talking, no expression on his face at all, and the other one was talking to him. I really don't know how to describe it, but the way he was moving his arms looked like a sim. He was sort of flailing them around, but almost robotically, and he's repeating the same movement over and over again. It was really weird and creeped me out. I watched him for like 10 minutes before I was interrupted by a customer. It's so hard to explain what exactly I saw, because I don't think people can envision it when I explain it. But to me, it was like a character in a game watching an NPC from a distance. Weird. No, I understand what you're saying. I think I've seen people acting like that too, like they're not necessarily real, or their movements are almost pre-programmed or planned, and they don't really make much sense, so yeah, I get it. Had a house fire that had extensive smoke and water damage. We had been in an apartment for about 6 months while the house was being repaired. I went to the house to cut the grass and went inside to see how things were coming along. Found 2 boxes in the dining room that had wedding pictures, kids' baby pictures, and my great-grandfather's pocket watch, etc. These items had been all around the house and would have had to have been gathered. I checked with the contractor, and they didn't know how these items got there. I checked with the company that had cleaned out the debris before the contractors started, and they said they didn't know where the boxes came from either. I had attended a ghost hunt one night, and after getting home in the early hours of the morning, I happened to look outside my bedroom window. I noticed a shadow figure running back and forth and managed to catch it on video. This continued for a couple of months, and then my ex-husband and I started to go through a horrendous breakup. I was never afraid of the shadow figure. I'd caught it multiple times, and neighbors also witnessed it when I messaged them. I don't know how, but I just knew it was a young boy, and I called him Jacob. Anyway, as my ex-husband and my relationship soured further, another shadow figure would turn up, also caught on video. The second figure made me very uncomfortable, and I made it clear in my head that it was never welcome in the house. My ex-husband descended further into drink and drugs, and we'd literally get plagues of dead flies. I'm talking dozens. I'd clear them up, and hours later they'd be back. One night my ex-husband was in the spare room drunk yet again, and I'd gone to bed. I was woken up in the middle of the night by what felt like a slap to the face. When I woke up, I looked in my doorway and saw clear as day a young Victorian-looking boy and knew something was wrong. I was totally freaked out, but went to my ex-husband's room only to find he had fallen asleep drunk with multiple candles burning dangerously close to flammable items. I truly believe if I had not been woken that night, we would have died in the inevitable fire that would have occurred. After I was finally able to get my ex-husband to leave, I never saw the second dark shadow figure again, nor did we have any more mass dead flies. I also never saw the good shadow figure again. I think at that time, he saw the need to protect me and his job was done. Many years ago, I was helping a friend and her roommate fix up a house that had been rented. At one point, we realized we only had one brush, and buying a couple of rollers with pans would get the painting done faster. We were also hungry, so we decided that I would drive the 2 roommates to Kmart to get the paint rollers and some other things we needed, while I went to Burger King down the road to get us lunch. We were gone less than 30 minutes from the time we left the house. When we walked in, there sat my friend who said, "Where the hell have you guys been? I'm starving." The weird thing was that the entire living room had been painted, including the baseboards and windows, and the furniture, which had been shoved to the center of the room, was arranged in the room. My friend was really pissed at us for being gone 4 hours and leaving her to do the whole living room. It took a long time to convince her we were gone less than a half an hour, even taking her down the block to show her the clock on the corner bank, back before cell phones. To this day, we sometimes talk about the time glitch she experienced in that house. She had to have lived that 4 hours, because how else could she have painted a very large living room and all the trim and still have time to arrange the furniture so she could sit and fume at us being gone so long? When I was 12, I went to a summer camp in the western US. We were sleeping around a big campfire one night, epic night of chubby bunnies and other campers purposefully clogging toilets, and one other girl and I were still awake and whispering while looking up at the stars when we suddenly saw a flashing colored light on one side of the sky. It was flashing primary colors only, and then it zipped straight to the other side of the sky and then to another spot. It zipped across the sky like a half a dozen times and then zipped off. I was sure I had to be dreaming, but I asked the other girl about it in the morning, and she absolutely remembered too. We checked with the camp's science person, and she had no idea what we could have seen. This was back in the 90s, so no internet, no phone cams, no way to know if anyone else saw it, but it definitely happened. I was visiting my grandparents who lived in a small town. Their house was adjacent to our small farm. I went into the balcony that opened toward the farm at around 2 a.m. for a smoke. It was pitch black, but I felt eyes on me even though I couldn't see anyone. I carried a small battery-operated flashlight. I checked using, but I saw nothing. I couldn't explain the discomfort in my stomach, but I felt that I was being watched. Right when I wanted to brush that feeling off, I heard my inner voice go inside, check all the doors and windows. It spooked me, so I rushed inside, blindly followed my inner voice's direction. Couldn't sleep the whole night. Dozed off when the sun was out. Later that day, my grandma informed me that they lost their neighbor to a robbery gone wrong. The police also found knotted ropes next to our farm's wall. They believe it was my Gram's house that was targeted. However, due to some reasons, the robbers changed their minds and attacked the nearby house instead. It was a time when cameras weren't the norm, and it was hard to catch culprits based on clues. To this day, I haven't heard the same stern or cautious inner voice again. Okay, so it might sound so fake, and I do really feel it's hard for anyone to ever believe me. I think it was in grade 8 or 9. In my family, they don't buy children and girls phones until graduation and college. Don't remember the exact story of how and why, but my dad got me one of those cheap secondhand Galaxy phones that was made in China, like a crappy version of a phone I was happy and excited about. One day at home, I took some pictures of the sky and the moon was out. There were two, like it's 3 or something p.m. I snapped a few ones, and after one another, then, when I checked them, I swear there were some of the other planets in the pictures too. Like I saw 3 to 4 of them. With a crappy, blurry camera. I don't know how it captured those. They were so close to the moon and Earth in those pictures. I can't prove it, cause I lost this mobile in a toilet, and they didn't fix it for me, as I don't need one, cause they changed their minds.